Welcome to The Natural You. I'm your host, Tim Wood. Today's guest is the founder of the Way of the Viking Men's Mental Fitness Program, Dan Gainsford. In response to a friend's suicide, Dan created this pre-habilitative, proactive approach to men's mental fitness. Here, men not only get physically stronger, but are encouraged to talk, be vulnerable, and share more of themselves. In the process, becoming more resilient, more community-orientated, and more caring in all areas of their life. Listen up to hear how being in nature plays a crucial part in the Way of the Viking program. Hi, Natural You listeners. Today I have the interesting Dan Gainsford. He's a behavior change coach. And I first want to tell you how I got in touch with Dan. A few weeks ago, I was on a little cycle packing adventure on my own, heading down in the south of England. And I spent a night wild camping, and I was heading out down to the coast. And I was looking for somewhere to have breakfast. And I was looking for a nice kind of big, greasy full English breakfast. And I didn't see anything. And then I just saw this little coffee shop. I thought, oh, you know what? I'll go in there. I'll have a coffee. If I have a breakfast, great. If not, I'll just go on and find something else. So I pulled in, and I was the only person in the coffee shop, and having my coffee and a nice big croissant. And in walked three guys, and on their T-shirts, they had the thing "Way of the Viking," and I was like, so as the first chap turned around, I said, "Hey, hi, well, who or what are the Way of the Vikings?" You know? And it was a chap called Jimmy, and he told me about this group of guys that got together and some of the work they were doing, and I definitely felt a connection with him, and it resonated with some of the work we do on Cairo Wild. And so he said, well, Dan is really the guy to chat to, because he's the guy that set it up. So we got in touch, and here we are. We've had a brief chat on the phone, but today I really want to explore Dan's work and some of the fascinating stuff he's been involved in creating and setting up. So welcome, Dan.
Hey, Tim, thanks so much for having me on, first of all. It's a pleasure to meet with you and speak with you.
Well, brilliant. So often I know the guest, or I've had some dealings with in the past. So having someone completely fresh on is great. A little bit of challenge for me, but it's really good. And I'm looking forward to what you have to tell us. So can you tell us about the Way of the Viking, how it came into being, and the story around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do my work primarily is as a coach, as a behaviour change coach. I also do personal training, all various other things as well. And as some of the work I was doing, I started working with a number of gents who were reaching out to me and saying that they wanted to make some changes, and various things were going on in their life. And after speaking to a lot of these guys, I felt that there was something missing. There was something that they all seem to need, some sort of sense of purpose, some sort of sense of camaraderie. I'm a big believer in nature being a big role for all of us, hence why we're here probably. It's a big part of it as well. And so I just started to put all of really what I sort of would say, all of the connections from over the years, all of the things that I've done, almost put them together, connect all the dots into this one program. And it started off quite loosely with a few guys, kind of 3, 4, 5 guys started off that had said they were keen on it, and then it just kind of grew and evolved, and it's become a thing now where we've got different tribes, and there's different competitions, and it's all based around daily tasks that are working around their mental fitness. We like to talk about mental fitness, and their physical fitness, their spiritual fitness, their emotional fitness, all these different components all kind of put into one place, and they receive points in terms of the competition side of it on the basis of how much commitment they give to, how many tasks they complete, and all things that will help them feel better in the long run, make us all feel better in the long run. And then they go onto a leaderboard, and the different teams compete against each other, and we have challenges at the end that we've set in terms of out in nature. And that's kind of how it's evolved, and it's kind of created its own culture as well, and it's kind of evolved. And the last tour that we had, which we tend to call them tours, 10-week tours, we've got 27 guys on at the moment, and it's the next one. It just keeps expanding basically. So So that's how it kind of originated.
Wow. So, sounds like there's a lot of kind of physical element to it,
Yeah.
in terms of the physical side. How do you, um, and then you also mentioned the point, which is obviously an external driver,
Yeah.
to help keep people going. How do you find people who don't respond to sort of the more kind of external drivers? Are you aware? Can you tap into those guys too?
Yeah, the reason we look at it, we have the individual basis, which is around the points. So there's that leaderboard. There's the tribe. So some people like to support their team and come in terms of the tribes. So then you've got some people that are motivated by being part of a group. I've come from a background of lots of different sports. I know you play cricket and things as well, and it's being part of that change room and not wanting to make sure you can keep up with everyone. Not keep up, but can play your part with everyone else as well, then that all comes into it as well. So it kind of speaks to those that are individually minded, those that are team minded, but then there's also those guys that struggle a little bit with it all. And there's always the case with each tour where there'll be a couple of guys who'll just struggle to get to grips with it to start with, and that's where their team kind of tend to rally round, support them, and they're always there to help them get on track. And what we find is once these guys are doing the tasks and picking up the points, then they tend to start feeling better, and it kind of creates that positive cycle, because the tasks, all the points come from doing tasks that make us feel better. That things around our 10,000 steps and cold water therapy. We have coaching models in there, all different things, gratitude lists, all this sort of thing. So the more they do, the better they feel generally, and it becomes a bit of a positive cycle.
Brilliant, brilliant. So it's not just physical tasks they have to do; the other kind of more, as you say, more kind of emotional, kind of mental tasks too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the big ones. I mean, every day gratitude is so I'm huge believer in, and so every day one of the tasks is to do a gratitude list, just a free gratitude list, post it on the group, and it's one of the best parts of the whole program. Really, is that you get to see 27 guys,
Yeah.
what they're grateful for that day in the morning when you wake up. So it's a great way for everyone to start the day. You're kind of already starting on a huge positive, because you've seen everyone else's gratitude, you've done your own gratitude list,
I like it.
and everyone feels great. Yeah. So
That's brilliant. I think that kind of camaraderie and just seeing I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, I am grateful for my kids or whatever it is,
yeah, absolutely.
So it just kind of, it reminds you that there's not just your kind of three things that you maybe struggle to find on that morning. You can recognize those in others too, which I'm sure is hugely beneficial. And how long did you say each of your your tours are, your cycles?
10 weeks. We do a 10-week tour. Originally, when I set it up, it was going to be kind of an ongoing process, just kind of a month to month, take it on from there. But it just didn't have. It worked well to start with, but it kind of drifted a bit. So I wanted to have something with a bit more intensity for a spell, so that everyone really kind of was in it for that spell. So yeah,
and you don't get too, it's always switching up, so you can enough time to kind of get involved and learn the new thing and learn the skill, and then kind of not get bored with
Yeah.
it, and you can always revisit it, but it's just something that you can cycle through later, but gives you that at the time.
Absolutely, and it gives me an opportunity to learn from each tour as well. I sort of see what works well, what doesn't work well, what things I can put more of, what things I need to adapt, or and also just to throw completely different coaching models in there and all sorts of different things for the guys. So it's kind of always evolving.
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment we're doing, which has caused a bit of a stir, talking everyone's love language, which is which is
like
quite
it.
different. You don't often get 27 men talking about their love language, but we've kind of created an environment where everyone's anything's you can talk about. Basically, there's nothing that's off limits.
And I think that's the real, for me, a real power of the work you're doing, is that getting men to talk and open up,
Yeah,
which is traditionally not a very masculine, or certainly in our society, a thing for men to do, and it seems like comes very naturally to women and women's groups. And I see that before, and we've spoken about that on this podcast a bit, but I'm very keen to learn. Obviously, you've mentioned some of the things you meant on the WhatsApp groups and things like that. What about in person? How do you get guys to open up and create a safe space for them to do that?
yeah. So first thing we have. a series of campfire chats. So we first we go out the weekend. We have I'll tell you a bit of the protocol, might make it a bit more make sense. So on a Saturday, we go in the gym. We're very lucky that the gym that we work out of is literally on the beach, which is fantastic. So we go in the gym, and then after that gym, everyone goes for a sea dip, gets in the cold water, and that's kind of how we finish. There's now, fortunately, a sauna there as well. So the next tour will be with the addition of the sauna, which will be great. So that's that. The Sunday is a hike. So we all go out on a hike, a couple of hours over the South Downs, different routes all the time. And the benefit of being out there, as you're totally aware, is obviously when you can walk with men, there's lots of research into showing that when you can walk together and you're not having to face each other and you're out in nature, it's much more comfortable for men to just talk and open up. And within that group, there's such a variety of different men from different backgrounds and all different experiences that I think as men, we feel we're the only ones going through certain issues and certain stresses, certain things in life. And actually, when you get out there and other people are more open to saying, "Oh no, I've been through this," or "I'm going through this," there's always someone who's going through a similar experience, so they can share with you, and it quite naturally people tend to speak to each other in that environment. On top of that, we have a Monday night, which is a bit more of an intense session, if you like. We sort of tend to do some heel work, which is slightly shorter. It's just that's the one to kind of, people probably, they always enjoy it afterwards, but the one probably people dread the most because it's a little bit tougher. But it's all part of it, the resilience to get there and make sure they do it. And then we separate everyone.
Is that in person or is that online?
That's in person as well. So we tend to meet and find somewhere, again, on the South Downs or around this area where there's a big hill. We tend to go up and down a big hill for a while, and just to work on, usually because we're working towards an end challenge, which will have something based around rucking or hiking or something around that way. So we tend to want to build our leg strength and that sort of thing as well. And then the final component of it is the campfire chats. So these are distance, they're done via Zoom. So we call them the campfire chats, obviously, to keep the Viking theme and everything. And we have aims to do some around an actual campfire, but for the logistics of it all, with everyone working in different places midweek and all different things, we have a campfire chat. So with your tribe, we sit and we'll basically go through their wins for the week, the topics of the week, and anything we need to discuss. And then we'll discuss the models that are part of their task. So I'll have sent a model previously that they have to complete to get points for. And the model could be anything from, we're talking about values, talking about future goals, talking about, as we said, love language, all sorts. It could be anything, basically, all sorts of different areas that we focus on. And then we just discuss and we make it very clear that anything's open, everyone's okay to talk about anything. There becomes a lot of trust as it moves on. And it tends to evolve that way. The first time I did it, it was kind of a fortunate occurrence that we couldn't do one of the campfire chats one night. So because myself and Jim were actually kayaking across the channel, and the Wi-Fi wasn't as good as we thought it was going to be where we were. So we made an alternative and asked the guys just to send a video of why they were there and what their ambitions were. And it was just a loose video. But it kick-started the whole thing because one of the guys come on, his first thing, he's a real bloke, and he was kind of like, well, I'm here, I want to lose a bit of weight, and that's why I'm here. I just want to get a bit fitter and lose a bit of my gut, and that was why he was there. Next guy come on and said, well, I'm here, and actually I've had a bit of stress around family life and a few things. I want to kind of just work on my mental health a little bit and see if I can just reduce my stress levels. Next guy come on and said something a bit deeper, kind of a bit more in terms of his experiences from the past. And then the first guy then did another video, came on and said, no, that's not fair for me to leave it at that. I was just touching the surface. This is why I'm really here. And actually went a bit more into depth what he really was hoping to get out of it and what his process was. And that kind of kick-started the whole process because then everyone felt a bit more open to say whatever comes to their surface.
Yeah.
And the bravest people are the first guys that kind of come out and are happy to be open from the start, and that kind of sets the tone for everyone. Because once one person does, everyone else gets that feeling of, it's all right for me to actually talk and open up a little bit and be a bit vulnerable.
It's safe, and you could see that no one's kind of ribbing them or giving them kind of joking or teasing them. Or
no, absolutely.
Like so, yeah. It's brilliant. And in your kind of separate groups or your teams, do you have sort of leaders or sub leaders or to kind of galvanize that? Because I mean, if it's you and there's 27 guys and maybe 3 or 4 groups, that's quite a lot of work for you to do.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. Yeah, it is a lot of work. That's kind of evolving at the moment. So at the moment, I kind of oversee all of it, and I kind of naturally let people tend to start to find their leaders within the group, and I kind of try to. Sometimes some people get nominated a little bit more to take a bit of a leadership role, but they're all men, and I kind of like the fact that they kind of evolve that themselves and tend to find a leader with amongst them who can galvanise them and take them to that next point. So yes, there's no official leaders generally, but they tend to be people that tend to step up a little bit more and to help galvanise everyone, and at different stages. So sometimes there can be someone who's leading well, and then life can change a little bit. Something might happen, and they're suddenly not able to give it quite the same commitment. So someone else will tend to take on that mantle and step up as well. So.
And do you find that some people go, I'm going to do this 10-week tour, and then I'm out for 10 week, and then come back in again, or is it sort of most people are fairly consistent staying with the program?
Primarily, from the last tour, 100% of the guys stayed on again. So it tends to be most that you might get a couple of drop offs for whatever reason, life through, but generally most people tend to stay on, and that's why it keeps sort of evolving in size wise as well, because you get obviously new people join as well. So yeah, the majority of guys just find that they're really enjoying it, and they just want to keep going. They sort of see it as a way of just keeping themselves consistent and continually making that personal progress, personal development.
Yeah. So it's a real support structure too,
Yeah.
to get familiarity and routine, which we often
absolutely
benefit from, as well as the camaraderie. I'm curious about the name. Why you don't look particularly Scandinavian. I'm not sure. Maybe you are. The Viking connection. What is that, and what does the Viking represent to you, and why did you choose that?
Yeah, well, my wife is Swedish, so I've spent the last 16 years, 17 years, I've got to get that right, 17 years since we've been together, travelling back and forth to Sweden and lots of Scandinavia, to be honest. We've flown to different parts and travelled around. And for that 16, 17 years, been going back and forth, and I just fell in love with that area of the world. I love it, absolutely fell in love with it. And then for me, and then myself and Jimmy, who I spoke about before, just during lockdown or after lockdown, we ended up buying in a place in Swedish Lapland, right on the border with Swedish and Finnish Lapland. So we kind of have this real connection and affiliation with Scandinavia. Love all of that part of the world. Love the nature, the outside element, and for me, the Viking element of it, like just taking away certain elements, obviously, which the more aggressive elements of the Viking nature. But what I actually love is a lot of their sense of adventure. They're going to Valhalla. It's about trying to live every day as best as they can. It's not about they assume their death is already set, so it's about trying to get the most out of every day, whatever they can do. They want to be the best version of themselves they can, so that they can get to Valhalla. The whole element of exploration and adventure and everything else, that all kind of came into it, and I just thought it just worked quite well. And with retreats that we had a vision for the future, to take the retreats out to Scandinavia, to our house and other places potentially, it just all fitted in really, really nicely, and it just sounds pretty cool. I think a lot of guys join just for the Viking. They say, I just like the name Viking.
I think that, yeah, and I think like you mentioned, the physical element that you bring to that, because I do, there are men's groups, and we've got the men's shed and things like that for the older guys, and the other kind of initiatives like that. But this seems to be very physically orientated, which I think is great, and I think the Viking kind of way of life sort of represents that physicality, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of how you connect physical, mental, emotional, how do you work with those within yourself? How do you vision that in your work for the guys?
Well, I guess what I should say first of all is that the underlying aim of all of this is, as we spoke about before, getting men to talk. But I think it has to be, I wanted to change it in terms of, there's lots of groups about men talking, but the vast majority of men still won't. That's the truth of it. Most guys I speak to still won't. However much you say, there's lots of different campaigns out there, and obviously the stigma's reduced dramatically in terms of talking about mental health and everything else. And there's certainly much, much better than it used to be, but it's still, the vast majority find it difficult to talk. So I wanted something that was a pre-habilitative element to it, so that you could create something where people feel strong for talking, not just talking because they feel they need to. Because
Oh, that's brilliant. So they're talking not just when they're feeling weak, when we're least likely to talk. So if I'm feeling really dark and down, that's like I don't really want to talk. It's just like I'm in my freaking bad place, and it's like, well, maybe I'm just going to nestle down here, and then and maybe someone will reach out to me. I hope,
yeah,
or I certainly don't want to reach out for help. So coming at it from a kind of getting used to talking from a place of strength, I like that, because then you can so when your resources are low, it's more familiar to you. It's like the same like you're using exercise. It's like when we prepare for it, then when it comes to the hard part, the easy part's easy.
yeah,
Then when you come to the hard part, we can actually do it because we've prepared for it. So that you said the pre-habilitation, which you use in rehab as well. It's like, do you want to rehab or do you want to prehab? Is this proactive or this reactive? And so this proactive model just really resonates with me. So
yeah.
I think that's brilliant.
Absolutely. I think it's like fitness. Obviously, come from a world of working in fitness, etc. You don't just do one thing and you're fit. You have to work at it daily. It's kind of part of the process. You have to build your fitness day on day. And I think, and I call it mental fitness always in our program for that reason, because I think that resonates more with men. If you speak about mental health, I think, even with physical health, you speak about health, and until you have a health issue, it's one of those things that I need to get to. I should be doing that. I could be doing that in the future, but you don't really think about it until it actually becomes an issue, and then suddenly health becomes important. And I think from a mental perspective, it's the same thing. Lots of people say, "Yeah, I should be working on my mental health. I should be," but it's enough for other people, really, other people who are suffering with their mental health. But everyone's got mental health.
Yeah.
I've got it. You've got it. Everyone's got it. It doesn't matter. The strongest willed people in the world, everyone has got mental health.
Yeah.
So for me, it's literally a case of, we take it back to fitness. Well, let's work on your mental fitness then. From day one, we'll do little tasks to see if we can build it. These things, and as you feel yourself feeling better, feeling stronger, when you do get those moments that as you said, when you're not feeling great, actually, hopefully you've got the tools in there to feel, firstly, more comfortable to open up when you need to, but also, hopefully, you've got tools to deal with overwhelm, anxiety, whatever else it might be. You've already worked on a lot of these things, and hopefully you can bring it back, and it's not such a big task to do that.
And then, of course, the physical element is driving all the positive neurochemical attributes that are going to help us, be resilient, but also make us feel better in the day to day. And if there's a regular meetup that you're doing that, there's more chance of like, okay, yeah, that's gonna lift me anyway. In addition to the talking stuff, and then
yeah, absolutely, it all goes hand in hand, doesn't it? I mean, it's when you feel low, the best thing. I mean, probably for me, probably connecting everything, nature and everything. Probably the last time I had a real spell, I was really felt quite overwhelmed, in deep stress. I remember I took on a role that I was doing at the time, and I was here at home, and my kids were pretty young, and I was sitting there, and I kind of snapped at one of my kids. I wasn't sleeping well. I was doing too much, and I just wasn't being present with them. I remember I snapped at my kid, and I remember my wife saying, he didn't eat, and then I snapped at her, as you do, and you're kind of in that mode. And I remember just being this thing, what are you doing here? And it was an absolute storm outside. It was blowing a gale. The rain was chucking it down. And unfortunately, I lived just at the foot of the South Downs. So I literally went out, put on my running trainers, put on a pair of shorts and a T-shirt, and just went up the downs and just went for a run, and had some music on as well at the same time. And it's like nature draws you to that when you really, really need it. It's the place that sort of, it just draws you to it. So I went up there in this phenomenal storm, and I was at the top of the downs, and I just loved it, and it kind of, and everything, it sort of cleared my mind. I came back and said, God, what are you doing, Dan? You've got to just, let's reset, take a step back. And I came back, changed my situation really, and everything that was going on. I knew that what I was in wasn't the right thing for me, work-wise and everything else. I had to just take it back to basics and rebuild again. And for me, it's that is it. It's those things, getting out in nature, exercise changes your outlook and everything else. It all works together. So I see it as all completely interconnecting, and the spiritual side of it comes into it as well in that, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And while we're there, what are there any kind of specifically more spiritually orientated things that you do, or was it just acknowledgement of that in the work, or do you have any kind of specific things that you would lean into to help men access that?
No, I think it's more just in the general feeling that there is something a greater purpose than just what's going on here, understanding that there's more than what is just going on around us. So it's nothing from a religious perspective or anything else. It's, I think, literally the things like practicing gratitude, just being aware of the interconnection of life, really, and that there's, I'm a big believer in. I read a book called Conversations with God, and it's I don't know if you've read it. It's a book. It's a great book, and in that there's one thing that sort of says never doubt the outcome. It's kind of this sort of belief, and that's what I took from it, that everything has a purpose, everything interconnects, and that is kind of, when I talk about spirituality, I kind of look at it from that element. There's a greater purpose for us all, and it doesn't mean you need to be Christian or Buddhist or Muslim or anything else. It's just that understanding that what's going on here and now, we can take a step back and recognise that there's a greater purpose all around for all of us.
Brilliant. So really broad and not exclusive.
No,
not kind of excluding different people. Anyone can join in from any background and still benefit, and they could still use that. If they were practicing a religion or philosophy, you could still fall within that. So I find that really, really encouraging. And one thing I was kind of thinking about is obviously your role as a coach and doing this, and so is obviously your passion and your work, and but how do you kind of monetize this because you got to support you? It sounds like it's a full-time job in itself.
Yeah.
So do you see it as your job, or is it a labor of love, or do the guys contribute to help you maintain that? How does that all that work in terms of for you to get kind of compensated, but also have an equal exchange with the guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So the tours, the guys pay for the tours, so there's a fee for the tour. It's kept at a really, I think it's a really fair price. It's kind of a big thing. I was doing one-to-one coaching, I still do one-to-one coaching, which is at a slightly higher fee. And what one of the reasons, again, back to why it started, was I spoke to a few guys who I'd sort of had conversations with, who really needed some support, really needed something, and they just couldn't afford it. They basically couldn't afford my one-to-one program. So I thought, well, how can I do this in a way that, I have to be monetized, because, as you said, I've got a family. It will be my living. It does take a lot of time, but in a way that's managed, people can afford it. And it's not elitist. It's not aiming at any level. It's anybody can afford it. And the truth of the matter is, anyone can afford it, really. It's at that level where people should be able to afford it, or can afford it, as long as they prioritise it. Had one of the guys who's in the programme, who's been a real success, who, when it was first happening, I knew that he wanted to get involved, but he was kind of a bit nervous about it. And he would use that as an excuse, saying, no, I don't think I can afford it. But he'd be out on a night out when I met him, and he'd have had 8 pints, 10 bottles, whatever it might be. And I'm like, well, that's, half of that would be more than enough to be involved in this. And eventually he changed, and he did come, and he's been a great success. And he said he's got far more money now, because he's drinking far less. Rather than drinking regularly, he sort of has maybe once a week at most where he has a drink, and he saved all of that money as from there. So that's kind of how it works. People pay per tour, and works that way.
Oh, that's great. So it's a 10-week commitment, and it sounds very reasonable, and probably not much more than a gym membership, sounds like.
No.
So it sounds very good. And I'm just curious, because that's always a challenge for when we're doing work that we really love. We can sometimes sort of give it away just because we love it so much, and at some point you get to, hang on, this is taking a lot of time. It's like me with the podcast. Like, I did it and I love it. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
And then for a while I was like, geez, this is taking loads of my time, and it's like, got other things to do. So, I've come back to it like, okay, well, this is a labor of love. This is a passion project. But, when it's taking that much amount of time, then you've got to have something that feeds back. So that's good that you found a way to balance that.
Yeah. And also, I'd say that I kind of created a program based around, I'm a dad of 3. I've got a busy life, and tried to create a program that kind of fits around my life as well. Hence why we do early Saturday mornings, early Sunday morning, Monday evenings, and kind of Wednesday and Thursday evenings for the campfire chats and things. So it kind of works. I'm always have dinner with the kids. I'm always kind of around for that sort of that period of the day when they get back from school, that I can have that time. The mornings I still work. I still train people one-to-one in the gym as well, and I still do one-to-one coaching as well online. So it all works, but I make sure that I have those sort of key components so I can get that work-life balance. And
brilliant.
I mean, with this, it doesn't feel like a job at all doing whatever. It is literally I love it. It's it's as much helps me as much as it does everyone else. Really, it's such great fun to be part of that it's not a chore.
I can see that, and that passion is obviously the key driver. Um, with obviously going to be people listening to this and going, "Oh, I really like the sound of this. How do I do something similar? Will Dan let me copy his work? Is there a workbook he has or a schedule, things that he's worked out? So are we going to see a manual, a workbook, a book even to help people do this? Because if we're going to get men to access their emotions and talk about it, it can't just be in one little town here and there, right? It's going to have to create a real movement. So if we're going to create a movement, how do you envision that, Dan?
I think the next stage I do. I mean, already started the process of writing a book, putting bits together. So that's kind of in process, but it's a little way off at the moment. But I also think there needs to be kind of a distanced option as well, where I'm hoping to connect people in different areas where I can have. Because once the tasks are out, I'm going to be trialing one coming up soon, actually, in between the next two tours. So this tour finishes in mid-July. Next one starts in September. And a lot of the guys it's quite a big gap in between for this one. So I'm doing a kind of a 28-day program, which isn't based on attendance, so to speak. So it's working on some of the tasks, and I'll kind of trial that, see how it works. And there's also an app being developed which will make things a lot more straightforward for me. So whilst we want connection, it just makes things manageable from distance. So that's kind of how I see it, envisage it moving forwards at the moment. Whether there's a process, I've had quite a few other coaches ask me if I could coach them in terms of delivering it. So that is another thing I'm looking towards.
Yeah, I was thinking of creating leaders. Having like a national thing where people can come down, learn the skills. Maybe a few weekends or something, and then take those out. And so it'll be interesting to see where you take it or how you expand it.
Definitely, it's one of those things. It's kind of I've got so many different ideas, and it's I'm trying to not get too carried away with different
to experiment and see which ones are going to work.
Yeah, exactly. Evolve it, make sure it works, and then when I'm really comfortable that actually I've got this thing that's working and it's benefiting, the vast majority. If it's obviously not everyone will always succeed in every program, but if I'm getting 99% or 90% of the guys that are getting great benefit from it, then that's something I need to really work out how it's going to work without me being at the centre all the time and everyone else being able to take over. So that's what we're trying to evolve point by point. So,
and have you had any kickback or feedback on it just being men, or are you getting like requests saying, "Hey, why is this only the guys? It's sexist." I want to come along. It feels like someone's girlfriend or friend or someone wants to join. How do you feel those, and or are there plans to develop either co-ed or women only events? How do you see that?
Yeah, I've definitely had massive reach out from females who say that they'd love to have the same sort of thing. So potentially further down the line, and we're looking to do a female retreat in the new year in our base in Lapland to give some people a bit of a taste of that side of thing as well. But the reason, and I've dabbled with this a lot, really kind of deliberated whether I should start a female one. But my purpose originally was because. I suppose a good friend. I lost a good friend of mine back in 2020, and he was through suicide, and I've lost another good friend through his physical health, and lots of other old school friends through suicide as well. So for me, the main aim is to look at tackling that suicide discrepancy between males and females at this point, and I need to keep that as my main focus. So the reason I choose men is not because I don't want to work with women. In fact, most of my one-to-one coaching has been with females, and I really love working with females. In fact, you get much deeper conversations often because women are much more open, and it can work really, really well, and had good success on that front as well. But for this program, the focus is on men because we've got this moonshot idea of reducing suicide rates. Obviously, we'd never know if that could happen, and we're just doing our little corner of the world. But if you could create a cultural change, who knows what that could lead to?
I think that's really important. I was just looking at some of the suicide stats, and this is in the UK, and I'm sure it's echoed around the world, but 75% of all suicides are male, right? So it's like 3 times women. Yeah, the 35 to 65, 64-year-old, it's the biggest risk factor for men. The highest rates in England are between 50 and 54 in terms of suicides, and it's the biggest killer of men under 50.
Yeah, it's crazy. That
So
blows my mind every time.
I mean, just think about that. That is huge, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just it's across all different professions, different cultures, and and it affects professionals quite highly. Like some of the stats, some of the people who are most affected are healthcare workers.
Yeah.
So doctors, nurses, vets, and then the other category I found quite interesting was farmers. People working in agriculture. So different stresses affecting us, and people not being able to get access. I mean, the Samaritans, which is a charity dealing with suicide, get a call every 10 seconds.
Yeah, insane.
That's the UK charity. So those are the people who are reaching out, right?
Yeah.
And as you and I were just speaking earlier, it's the challenge is us not reaching out.
No, absolutely.
So those are the people who are reaching out, and I think there are probably more that actually aren't. And so taking this proactive, pre-habilitative stance, helping guys become more resilient, giving them an opportunity to express, and and not kind of internalize all these stresses or catastrophize all these things that we tend to do that can take us down that dark path, and that self-destructive, not just suicide, but other self-destructive, let's call them slow suicides,
Yeah, absolutely.
in terms of alcohol abuse or other addictions and things like that, or even relationship suicides, and just kind of like being an arsehole.
Yeah, just self-destructive behavior, isn't it? It's kind of
all around, starting fights with your best mate or whatever it is, So I think this work is super, super important, super valuable.
Yeah.
And
Can I add another stat to that as well? Sorry, there's another one that comes in, that of those suicides, the one that never really gets spoken about is that nearly 2/3 of those, in different countries it varies slightly, but certainly in the Western countries, nearly 2/3 of those are men that have never had any intervention with mental health care professional, or never had any. So suggesting that nearly 2/3 of those are men that have just, no one even are aware of that they're suffering, or they're struggling or anything else. So, and that's
because they aren't able to.
Yeah.
Because they aren't able to, or just aren't able to take that step.
Yeah.
Never had maybe the opportunities there. They just haven't been able to kind of reach out. So having access to guys in a more kind of informal setting, and but with the specific purpose of asking them and encouraging them to open up, will lead to those guys who probably don't even know it within themselves. Because I suspect, some of these guys, it's something that just comes on out the blue, and they have a bout of depression or something like that, and that's it.
Yeah.
And others may be percolating for a while, but if we can get into that and make these kind of groups more normal, we have a little bit in sports, but it's quite kind of rah, bit of chirping, bit of banter. It's much more banter. Go down to the pub, have a drink with your mates.
Yeah.
It doesn't create an environment for intimacy.
No.
Or vulnerability, should I say? It's probably the opposite.
Absolutely.
It's quite like you shouldn't be talking about. Keep that for somewhere else. It's like, this isn't the time or the place. This is a bit jokey, a bit laddish. The tendency tends to be that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's quite interesting in the group, a lot of the guys say that everyone's got different groups of male friends and everything else, but very quickly the guys tend to say that they feel that they know these other guys so much more better than they know even their best friends they've known for many, many years, because suddenly people are opening up much more. And the beauty of that, the reason I say that from a strength perspective, is that it bonds everyone much quicker, and as a team, everyone unites much, much quicker. So suddenly everyone's supporting each other much, much more. We get things within the group where someone will be quiet for a day, and I'll get a number of messages of people saying, is so-and-so all right? And he'll get a number of messages from people straight away. So it's that whole thing of, and he may just be having a busy day at work, but sorry, it was the camera. May just be having a busy day at work, but it's one of those things that when everyone knows each other that much better, they tend to understand how each other's minds working, and therefore you create a much stronger team environment.
And so
it's
you're
important.
more interconnected, aren't you? And
Yeah,
you're more
absolutely.
perceptive. You get a feel for different things. Where if it's at work or through another kind of connection, might not be at that level. So the guys start to develop those sensitivities, which is really something great. So yeah, I think what you're doing is wonderful, Dan. I really look forward to seeing how you're going to expand this and how we could all benefit from that. And is it okay if I put your details down and guys can just contact you to find out?
Yeah, please do.
I'm sure some guys have had ideas around this, and I know there are other men's kind of groups doing similar sort of things, but I think your template sounds really interesting, and I'm sure we can all serve our brothers better by being involved with things like this. So yeah, I'm really what's the word? I'm not just intrigued. I'm really happy that you doing this work. So thank you so much
No, thank you so much for having me on. And
for taking the lead and doing this. Before we go, I just want you to tell us a little bit more about your cottage in Lapland. I know you rent it out, so this is an opportunity just to kind of plug that. Tell me how easy it is to get there, what's available to people if they do want to rent it out. I had a look at the website; looks really nice and pretty affordable. So just if you give it a little plug, and then I'll put the link to that in the show notes as well, as long as your details, and that'll be great.
yeah, fantastic. Thanks very much. With the cottage right on the Swedish-Finnish border. We're currently, we've run our first retreat there this year. We're going to be doing another one in October, because a lot of people think of Lapland, which is where it is in that Lapland region, as being just Christmas, and yeah, it is fantastic for that. Father Christmas is not too far away; he's our neighbour, so to speak. So so you can visit, and it's beautiful in the winter months. But it's also for a nature lover, it's amazing all year round. I mean, we've just got back. Myself and Jim have just been out there to do a bit of maintenance, bit of work on it, a bit of maintenance, and it's about as lush as a place can be, because only a few weeks ago it was thick snow and wet, and now it's 24-hour sunshine and 33 degrees. So it's absolutely beautiful. So yeah, our website is visitLapland.co.uk for the house. You can rent it out privately, or we're also open to other coaches taking retreats out there and doing bits from there as a base. So
how many beds do you have?
Depends how cozy you want to get. So it's only a 2-bedroom place at the moment. We're looking to expand the outbuilding, but we had a group of 8 guys out there, and it kind of worked nicely for that as well. So there's sleeping downstairs as well. So yeah.
And you've got some woodland attached to it, is that right?
Yeah, we've got so it's got 5 hectares of land with it. It's got a full forest out the back, which is fantastic. We've got videos of moose out there and reindeer and all sorts. So it's we've got and the beauty is at the moment, when it's a 24-hour sunlight, you get the animals don't really know what the hell's going on. So we've got a snowy owl that obviously would normally only come out at night, flying around the house trying to look for its prey. So you get to see some wonderful, wonderful wildlife, as well as obviously in the darker months, the northern lights, etc., which is, it's a great base to see the northern lights. So yeah, there's lots of positives around it. So it's a great part of the world.
Brilliant. Good. Oh, fantastic, Dan. That sounds amazing. I just want to say thank you again for joining us. Thanks for the work you're doing, and I know we'll stay in touch. And any final words for the men out there, or the women who are supporting men?
Just keep taking action. Keep taking action. Be willing to reach out. And I think the big thing I always kind of encourage everyone is, step out of our comfort zone. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. I think all of our growth comes from there. So anything we can do to step out of our comfort zone is always a positive thing. So yeah, and don't be afraid to reach out. You got plenty of Viking brethren here if you need a shout. So
awesome. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Cheers, Dan.
Cheers, Tim. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening. Despite national campaigns and charities to support mental health, the statistics on men's suicide rates remain unchanged and are shocking. The impact these have on personal lives, families, and communities ripple on for generations. Clearly, men struggle to share and ask for help when most needed. In my opinion, initiatives and programs like Dan's at local level are going to be key in resourcing men in our modern world. For starters, let's start talking about mental fitness rather than mental health. Just this subtle shift can create the idea that we can build our mental and emotional resilience just like our muscles. Dan's contact details and Lapland website are in the show notes. Take a look and reach out.